What's up, folks?
Hi.
How's it going?
It's good. We go, what is it, 10 years?
It's gotta be, what year did you do?
2012.
So yeah,
Sheesh, more than 10 years.
yep. And it might have been 11. 2011, it might have been before.
It's a long time.
Yes.
So I thought a lot about this, and what you all missed before you came up here was that we just played a trailer from a doc that we have coming out later this year, well, premiered earlier this year, called Going to Mars, the Nikki Giovanni Project. And so we did the doc, and it's incredible. And what I started talking about was the Confluential Films, which is the production company that Cody and I run. It's the confluence of art, entertainment, and business in a culturally specific way. And for me, it's always been about finding that space where art, entertainment, and business, you figure out that space in between where you can do it well. And it led me to this idea of thinking about how doing well by doing good. And so thinking about how they're not mutually exclusive, where there are people who think about wanting to do something that matters, but it doesn't need to be charity, because if it's charity, you don't get to keep doing it.
Right.
And it's a conversation that Cody and I have had many times, because she is the bleeding heart who will do everything in the world for her community and for our community, but we have to figure out how to make it sustainable. And if we don't do that, we don't get to keep doing those things. And so you and I started talking a little bit about this backstage. I know you have very strong opinions.
A couple, two or three.
Like what? Where do you want to start?
Look, I think that when we're talking about businesses, right, we're in an interesting season where when we first started the Gathering, so I'm Ryan, CEO and co-founder of the Gathering Spot. When we started TGS, the conversation was about, hey, start a business. So there were all of these workshops on, this is a business plan, and this is how you start, this is an LLC. I think we're at a moment, though, where the conversation is really about scale. So it's cool to start, but how do we get our business to the highest heights, knowing that, like, we have all of the stuff to get to those same places, all the logos that we drive past every day, our stuff could be that big too. To get there, though, to your point, we've got to get very, very specific about the business model, knowing that, like, it can't be a charity, right? We've got to look at the fundamental goal of any business. It has to care for itself. So that can't be controversial, right? We as a community have to be supportive of watching people, yes, start, but then scale, knowing that when they do, there's some things that we can hold them accountable to later. But big businesses allow us to hire folks. They allow us to think about owning our own neighborhoods. Right. That's important for where we are sitting right now. But it starts with us being intentional about knowing that doing well in business doesn't mean that we have to do it small.
I couldn't agree more, because there's this idea that, oh, you get to a certain scale and then you sell and then you sold out. I was like, no, that's not what it is. If what you're trying to do is be able to get to a certain point, and if selling allows you to continue to scale, or allows you to be able to reinvest in different ways, or to invest in your family and put yourself in a position to build generational wealth, or to position your family in ways that you couldn't have otherwise, that's not selling out. It's not selling out at all. And so it's realizing that we have to align our talents with our mission, and it is okay to want to win. And especially when, like for Cody and I, it's always been about how do we all win together? Because there's a way to do it. Please.
I just want to interject there, because I have seen some cases where if your business is for the betterment of a certain community or a certain culture, selling that business to someone who doesn't have the same interests or the same love and care for that community, I've seen instances where I'm like,
Yeah, very true.
you sold. I get that we are, we're taught very largely to be like more individualistic. And this is no slight to anybody that sells a company. Like I see the benefit in that, but I feel a duality about, my perspective on that, because it is our responsibility also as a community, as a village, to protect the culture. But there are very few cases where
I agree, but I think there's nuance. And so you think about somebody like Rich Lou or somebody like Diddy, where they both sold companies. And after selling those companies, they've continued to invest in ways that they would not have had they not been able to do that.
Right.
And so what's the better win, where you're thinking short term is like, oh, I'm going to keep Sean John, where I've got it to a certain level. I can't really do anything more beyond that. Or there's an opportunity because I'm thinking bigger and I'm thinking longer term. And so is it the best thing for the community that Sean John was no longer owned by Diddy? I don't know. But could he have built Revolt or could he have built whatever else if he didn't have the ability to do that?
That's very true. I think of clothing as a little different than we're talking about. I'm thinking of things, say, like a platform, like a social media or digital platform or something that is actually about the Black voice or something that is, protecting our culture in a different way. Clothing, we wear Italians more than we wear Black-owned companies. Let's just be real. And, I'm including myself in that but we care more about that. So I don't think of that, the same way. But he did do something that was for the culture. Revolt. He did turn it into,
And the same thing with Essence, where you got somebody where there's something that was built for the culture, where you've got Shea Moisture, and then being able to take that and it's scaled, and now he can do so many other things, and he's used that in a way that is beneficial for all of us. So.
I think, my bad.
Well, I was just going to say, as you all have been talking here, I'm thinking more of a historical example that kind of led the way in terms of BET selling to Viacom. So you think about creating financial flexibility. My name is Marco Williams, by the way. I'm with JP Morgan. My day-to-day, I actually consult financial advisors. However, a part of my time here is as a result of our Advancing Black Pathways. Part of that is financial literacy with respect to our $30 billion commitment in terms of closing the wealth gap. So as we talk about financial literacy, all this is obviously relevant. But yeah, creating financial flexibility is critical. In terms of what I do from a professional standpoint is, to a degree, at a baseline level. So just think about where you all are, whether you're an employee or whether you're an employer. Being a business owner is fantastic, but the reality is that not everybody can be a business owner. Not everyone has the mentality to be a business owner. And if you're not a business owner, that's okay. The issue is where do you add value, right? Where do you add opportunity from growth, whether it's yourself individually, and how does that translate to others? So in terms of what I do professionally, it's about financial literacy, right? In terms of how I work with financial professionals, it's about improving their business management practices and making sure they're their best selves on a day-to-day basis. So when you think about what you all do collectively, once again, employee and or employer, you're working because you want to accumulate wealth, right? You want to earn money to essentially fund your lifestyle. Now, as we transition to the next phase from an accumulation standpoint, this is where we get into the aspect of preserving that wealth for longer term purposes and creating additional flexibility. Now, where do we go from there? Distributing that wealth in a tax efficient manner, whether it's during life and or at death, right? So we think about all these things from a legacy standpoint, so it could be current from a business ownership standpoint. Whether you're a business owner or not, the issue is how do you add value and how do you continue to grow personally, professionally, financially, health-wise, and everything that we're talking about here collectively is from a wellness aspect. And the reason why I'm bringing these things up is because I want to kind of stay in my lane from a financial standpoint. I have my personal opinions in terms of what we're discussing, but I'm going to withhold that from this morning, or this afternoon where we are now. But I just want to kind of add a little bit of those things from a slightly different context.
I think that you used an important word, though, reality, right? You mentioned Viacom and BT. That's an important moment in our culture, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But if you think about what was happening then, right? If you're BET, there's nobody bigger than you if you're Bob Johnson and Sheila Johnson. You've taken in capital. Those investors are expecting a return at some point. You've got to drive that return. And you're looking at the landscape saying, well, what black folks can I sell my company to? But wait, I'm the biggest fish in the pond.
There are none.
That is what we face and what many entrepreneurs are facing on a daily basis, where we would love to keep it in the community. And I'm fortunate that when our company was acquired and we sold the company to some black folks, And I talked about how important that was to me, but it was really hard, right? Because as I'm looking at even our landscape, there's not a lot of options there. So if you're the biggest CPG company, where are you gonna go but Unilever or P&G?
Magic Johnson.
Yeah, and then we do that, right? But like, then our quick answer is, well, Magic Johnson, Oprah, Tyler Perry, we picked like, a handful of billionaires and say, well, they should take it. Well, last time I checked, all of them can't own all of our stuff.
Everything.
Right.
So we've got to have a nuanced conversation about the reality of what's available.
In my field, I think this is where conversations around endorsements and things like that, right? When I'm sitting with the brand, they may not be Black owned, but it is my job to make sure that their interest
Yes.
is in, whether it's fashion, whether it's whatever else. Let's just say it's a fashion brand. I have to make sure that they are interested in representing Black people. I have to make sure that, so it's not only always that it has to be sold, the ownership has to be, you know what I mean? But I think it's more so about the intent. It's about, are you about to come and, rape our culture? You know what I mean? And what's the word?
Culture vulture? Appropriate?
Someone's appropriate. Is this about appropriation? Is this purely about monetization? Is this, where that has endless ways it could go.
Keri, you're mentioning something that's very critical because I think about from an investment standpoint and how it translates to investments across the board. I mean, you think about environmental, you think about the social issues from an investment standpoint, you think about governance issues. So this is where we kind of get into this ESG platform, right? Investors invest with intention. Has anyone ever sold a home here? Has anyone ever bought a home? Right? And so oftentimes when you go to purchase a home or you're kind of in that search process, one of the things you ask is why are you selling it? Oftentimes the seller will ask, well, what are you going to do with it? Right? So that's directly in line with exactly what you're referring to. It's just on a completely different scale.
Yeah.
It's also interesting for me because, we own our shit. And so it's something that Cody and I, we've cared about. And it's figuring out how you balance it. And so one of the things so there are a lot of things that have happened recently. Up until about 3 weeks ago, there were two separate companies. There was Confluential Films and there was Black Love. Cody and I founded Black Love together, and Confluential Films I started prior to. And Cody and I owned 100% of Black Love. We owned the show, we owned the company. I raised money for Confluential Films last year, and I was really intentional about how I did it. And we talked about this. We were both sort of going through the process, and I refused to raise money only to not be in control of my own company or to have other people tell me the types of things that I can do with my own company. And when we combined the companies, Black Love and Confluential, into one company, it was the same thing. And so Cody and I own the supermajority of the company. We control the board, we control the vote, and we control all of it. And so, but in order to scale, in order to continue to do the types of things that we want to do with Confluential, with Black Love, we need partners. And so we were putting all of our money, all the money that we made from any of these things, from the show to whatever, we put back into the company in order to continue to build the community, to reinvest and to make content that we know we need, and to make sure that we can see us in the way that we know we actually are but haven't been represented. But for me, I'm not interested in painting on a small canvas. I'm not interested in talking to 10 people. How do we change that at scale? In order to do that, it requires a different way of thinking about things where we're not selling out, but we are thinking about the business of it and how to make it function as a business. So this isn't something we get to do today, but we get to do it next year and the year after and the year after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm thinking right now about imagery, right? We are what we see, right? I think the first panel hit the nail on the head in terms of, I think the gentleman was talking about his 12-year-old son in terms of what he listens to, what he sees, what he hears, and hey, am I gonna die before I'm 25 years old, right? So representation matters without a doubt. And so in terms of taking, ourselves where we are currently to the next level, and definitely the next generation, it's about seeing people do well that look like us.
Yep.
Right? And so and then there's a multiplier effect, right? So I'm only here because of what I saw in my old man, right? The reason why I dress the way I dress is because of him. The reason why I want to achieve the things that I want to achieve is because of him. So I had that image at home, and we can take that out into the masses, and then we create this ownership mindset, this mindset of, multiplying wealth, multiplying our exposure to businesses, and creating those different opportunities, which is one of the things that I really appreciate about what we're doing in terms of our Advancing Black Pathways, is creating additional avenues to access to capital. And really not just, when we talk about financial literacy, it's not in the sense of we don't know, we don't understand, but it's just about creating additional awareness so we can have that continued impact.
You mentioned in the idea of seeing people who look like us, who are doing well. It's actually the reason why I wanted you here, because there was, from, I don't know, again, 10 years ago, there was always this intentionality around the way you approach the business. And as you're an incredible artist and a talent, but it was an approach to writing and the business of music that I respected and appreciated, because if all of what you're doing is in the hands of somebody else, then it's a dangerous place to be. And you took ownership of that in a big way. So.
Yeah, I mean, people don't think, I think, of artists as entrepreneurs. I think they look at us a lot, maybe like puppets, that we are owned by someone and that someone is pulling strings and forcing us to do everything that we do. And to a degree, there can be that when you are a new artist, right? But that was part of the intentionality behind, or part of my intention behind why I took the route that I took. Because I knew that when I was in studio early on with other artists, I knew, oh, you're not gonna puppet me. You know what I mean? I'm gonna make sure that I know everything. I'm gonna read this book. For me, it was Donald Passman, All You Need to Know About the Music Business. And I read that book several times over. I waited years, I'm talking 8 or 9 years, as a songwriter before I did my publishing deal. Because I said, well, wait, so if they give you this amount of money for pipeline songs, let me see what they do after I have 10 hits. Let me just see. So I ain't got nothing to lose. I can stay broke. Ramen noodles are good to me. I'm good. So, for me, it was about waiting. It was about, just I'm a person, I'm a rebel. So I'm a theory tester. I'm gonna test this theory. I'm gonna see what happens differently. And so that worked out greatly. And I was super grateful, but people don't think of us as strategists, I think. You don't think about the business of music. If anyone is here, pursuing or knows someone that's pursuing music, it's actually 75% business and 25% talent. I know we all know, we see them. You're aware of not very talented people who, but their business savvy game, their marketing game, their image, their message, everything is all, they know how to wrap that gift. And so that's what, you know what I mean? And they know how to work their deals in their own favor. And the foresight that it takes to do that, to say, all right, well, I want to get here. So to get there, I got to do this. Then to get there, I got to do that. I want to get there, but let me do this first and get there. You know what I mean? It's that. It's strategy, just like any other business. We scale. Every artist you see on TV, every artist you see on, I don't know, everywhere else you see on the radio, they're smart enough. They have an awareness enough to realize, this is about growing my audience. This is about selling a product that's unique. This is about having an image that's damn near patentable. This is about just cutting through the noise. Because I mean, everybody raps, everybody sings, everybody has talent. Not everybody, but it's a lot. In the Black community, like, we are some talented people. Let's be real. I'm sure about 30 people in here could sing me out the water.
I think people tend to overestimate the value of talent and underestimate the value of hard work.
Yes.
And strategy.
Yes.
And so
and studying.
Yes. And so where talent is really 10%, 15%, maybe 25%, but it's understanding how to utilize that talent in order to turn it into something, and then being patient. And so what you said, what DeVal said earlier, like, I remember being in that Brooklyn apartment with DeVal in the kitchen. It was just the two of us. This was before he was on a TV show. This was before anything. He had just done a short film, and he was talking about where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it. And he was sacrificing at that point. The way that he was up here talking about it was true. But it's the willingness to invest in yourself today to be better off tomorrow or next year. And people don't quite get that.
Sacrifice.
It's the sacrifice now. It's the idea of something that I've found myself saying a lot. It's the idea of taking care of your future self. What do you wish you did today if you're a year from now? What would have benefited you? Or 6 months from now? What does that look like? How do you position yourself so looking back, you are appreciative? It's also the idea that, for me, luck is the intersection of preparation and opportunity. And so all sorts of things will come up. We will all find opportunities, but if we have not done our part, we won't be able to take advantage of them. And so
I think, though, like, we got to take a step back and remind ourselves there's a lot of people making a lot of money convincing us that, like, we're not ever going to be prepared enough to ever be in the game. It frustrates me on a daily basis. Like, you mentioned the word financial literacy. I think we have to, like, totally abandon that entire framework, right? We're not financially illiterate. Everybody is looking for different tips and tricks, right? The wealthiest people in the world are on the phone with somebody trying to help them get to the next place, right? So that isn't a new idea that we need to be, like, discovering. Like, everyone is discovering. When you see that energy, though, of, like, you're not talented enough, you'll never be prepared enough, you'll never be lucky enough, that stuff is just not true, right? And especially if you live here in Atlanta. I mean, look at what the city has produced over and over and over again. So, look, to be clear, and I'm trying not to, I don't want to at people here on the stage, but, like, these are both folks inside of the community and outside of it, but increasingly inside of the community that are convincing us that we don't have enough of the enough to get there. And, like, that's got to go away. It's not true. You walk around this city every day, it's not happening.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The talent's there. I think one of the things that areas that we're shifting into, particularly within our community, is how do we take our talents and begin to monetize those talents, right? Once again, whether you're an employee or an employer, it really doesn't matter. The issue is are you finding opportunities to add value, right? When you add value, now you're in a position to monetize the strength that you're bringing to the table. And when you begin to shift gears from there, I'm thinking about this whole legacy kind of component, right? So it's, once again, we were talking about, like, what's next, okay? So now you're in this kind of accumulation phase. Where do you go from there? What do you do with the wealth? How do you grow the wealth in a responsible manner? When I think about investing in general, there's investing in yourself, and there's obviously investing your money, and there's many different asset classes in which you can invest in. All of you all know these things, right? But how do you create a strategy and or a plan to allow you to maintain those investments during the up and or down periods? Because generally what happens from an investing standpoint, when the markets go up, what do you think most investors want to do? No, they don't. They want to buy more.
yes.
Right? When the markets go down, that's when investors want to sell, right? And so the reason why you need to have some type of strategy and or a plan, particularly focused on your cash bucket initially, that cash bucket is going to allow you to maintain those investments during the up and or down periods and to get you away from those emotions that can lead you to do what you don't want to do, which is buy, what is it? You end up, you
end up
you don't want to buy high and sell low, because if you do that, you're going to repeat that process until you're broke, right? That's the wrong thing to do. You want to do just the exact opposite.
Buy low, sell.
But in order to maintain that strategy, you have to have a short-term bucket anywhere within, say, contingent upon whether you have 1 or 2 household income. You've got to have a short-term bucket within a 12-month time frame, because once you're consistently confident about maintaining your living expenses, you have greater confidence to maintain those longer-term investments, right? So once again, we're all talking about businesses, we're all talking about ownership, we're talking about growth, we're talking about monetization. But once we get into this longer-term aspect, I don't care where you're from, I don't care what you look like, I don't care what profession you have, there are 4 risks that everyone has to deal with. And one is inflation, the cost of living. We're living that right now, right? The second issue is longevity, the issue of do you outlive your money? The third issue deals with long-term incapacity. Now, if you're like me, you probably think you're invincible, right? But then again, I was putting on my shirt this morning, I actually pulled a muscle in my back just looking in the mirror. So it reminded me that I'm not invincible, right? But the point is that from a long-term incapacity standpoint, it may not impact you directly, but earlier they were talking about the sandwich generation. You've got children and you've got parents, right? I think the earlier couple said, hey, we've got 4 kids, but sometimes I feel like we have 6, right? So long-term incapacity may impact someone else in your family that's closely connected to you, that's financially reliant upon you, and then that impacts your wallet. It may not impact you physically, but it's impacting your wallet, okay? And then so there are those different issues that we have to deal with. And then the fourth issue is a sequence of returns. What do I mean by sequence of returns? How do you efficiently distribute your wealth in a tax-efficient manner during life? Meaning, when you stop working, how do you create a retirement income paycheck without working for someone, right? And then how do you then distribute that wealth in a tax-efficient manner once you're promoted to glory? Right? So where does the wealth go? Does it go to the IRS? Well, we sure don't want it to go there, right? So there are a lot of things that you then have to think about. All right, what are the next steps? What are the next steps? What's the next phase as I'm thinking about accumulating my wealth? It can't just be about today. You got to consistently think about tomorrow and create a plan to maintain that plan during the ups and downs in terms of market volatility.
Not promoted onto glory, though.
Where would you like to go?
I don't know. That's where I'm going. I just never heard that.
Okay.
Promoted.
I'll take it.
I like it.
I'll take it.
I was like, what is he talking? Oh, heaven.
Those are really good tips. Those are really good tips, and I think that what often happens is, like growing up, I grew up in the hood in Philly, and didn't grow up with money. My family didn't have money, and it impacts your mindset. It impacts my mindset, and figuring out how to not allow the scarcity mentality to get in the way of being patient, of get in the way of being able to do those kinds of things.
Right.
Because scarcity becomes the default. It becomes, oh, I can't even think about savings because I got to pay for rent next month.
Yeah.
I got to make sure we got enough food. But it has to shift where you have to think about, how do I take care of myself in the future? How do I save a little bit beforehand? Because if you don't, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get off of the hamster wheel. But it requires an intentional shift in the mindset, because if we don't, we'll be stuck.
Definitely.
A lot of discipline, too. That discipline. I mean, survival mode is difficult. We all have been there. We've all been scraping. We might be there. Some of us watching or here now are still finding gas hard. You know what I mean? Like, just Let me do what I can today on a day-to-day or hour-to-hour basis. But that discipline that it takes to sacrifice, to say, no, I don't need to shop. I'm sure I got a couple things I could wear to this. I don't need to go buy a new something. It's like those small, intricate choices. You know what I mean? Like all the way down to that bag of chips. I remember my college days now. I remember very vividly, you know, and growing up in Decatur, and, you know, when I had a job, I just knew I'm never coming back to this mortgage company ever again. Never gonna waitress ever again. But I remember, you know, survival mode very vividly. I remember the choices I had to make about food, about gas, and how much I'm having to, you know, my budget was down to $20, like literally. And I remember there were so many times I had to be more disciplined than I was seeing around me, more disciplined than I was taught to be. You know, I grew up like this, like, Mom, hey, we're hungry. That, you know what I mean? You're used to, and breaking out of that mindset, some of us never do. Some of us never have the luxury to, but sometimes it's really here. It's about you don't know how to discipline. You don't trust yourself enough. You're not disciplined enough to make the decisions you truly need to make, because your wants, you're placing the priority on your wants over your needs, over your goals, over your long term. So I think I was just piggybacking off of what you said. Like, man, I remember discipline.
I think the good news is, Keri, that if there's any community that understands struggle and transcendence,
it's ours. True.
It's us.
True.
Right. So we have this conversation a lot of times, believing that, like, look, there are people in the community that will never get it, and we pay a lot of attention to them. But the vast majority of us understand, like, we've got to do what it takes. And I'll give you a quick example. So my business, the name is The Gathering Spot. I'm watching the news one day, and they say, don't gather, everyone go inside.
Hilarious.
And so, true story, all right, don't gather.
That's funny.
So I called my mama, right? Because that's what you do as an entrepreneur when you're scared.
You call
your mom. Called my mom, and I was like, look, I have as you know, we have a baby that's due in a couple of months, and they're saying don't gather. And then I had to take a second. I was like, wait, hold on. When we started this business, I paid myself nothing for years. I barely knew how to make payroll. We were like trying to make it truly, like folks were like day to day. I was like hour to hour. This thing was like just trying to get there to the next second.
People don't get that part.
They don't. But when we went into COVID, I had to take a step back, and I was talking to my business partner. I'm like, look, if there's any community, and if there's any people that understands how to get through it, we live that.
Facts.
I'm actually worried about everybody else that has never lived this before, right?
That's true.
So,
very true.
Let's buckle up, because I think that this is actually going to be a moment where we can, like, they're not ready for whatever this is about to be.
Oh my God.
But like, I used to live hour to hour, so I mean, COVID's gonna have to get in line. So, like,
right.
You know,
Everything's up from here.
Yeah,
everything's up.
That confidence. I mean, I know this panel is about entrepreneurship, but like, you have to carry that confidence. The same thing that has gotten us through so many different things as a community. To be sitting here, to get like, this was illegal, y'all. Black folks couldn't gather like this. There's too much. There's too many of us in here. The fact that we're here and are now going to have these conversations like, well, can we get there? Well, it was impossible to get here. So take that confidence with you in whatever the next thing is, because I don't accept when folks are like, can you be disciplined? Yes. Like, you know, so we will be fine. Ignore them. All of the folks that are suggesting to you that, like, it's not possible, it is. And, like, you're an example of the possibility because you're here. And we frankly should not be.
So Tommy, if I could just add, this is why I say ownership is not for everyone. Like, not everyone is built to not pay themselves for how many years?
2.
2 years. Not everyone is built to go through the struggles in which an artist, you know, goes through. And there are many stories that you can read about from an entertainment aspect in terms of the struggles to reach to the point of where they get on the big screen, and then you learn about what happens in the background from a contract
I got
standpoint.
plenty of those.
I'm absolutely certain you do, right? So, but if I could ask Keri and Ryan a question in terms of, what you all are building with respects to your own personal brands, professional brands, what do you all think about in terms of how do you maintain that legacy going forward?
Legacy from, is this one of your financial
Not necessarily.
context?
No, not necessarily. Yeah.
Okay. Legacy. I think a lot about it. It informs the places I go, the people I will associate myself with. It informs the types of deals I will do, the types of deals I will not do. Who I'm doing business with, how I speak, how I'm using my platform. Because I want to be remembered as someone who, yes, was creative, yes, had a dream, followed it, landed in the center of it, somewhere at the top of the, I want to be remembered also as a woman of respect, a woman of esteem, a woman who is maybe a little more, what is this? I guess the opposite of scantily clad, like a little more modest, you know what I mean? A little bit. You can see through this a little bit, but ain't that bad. I'm covered. But just someone, I think a lot about respect. I think a lot about respect when I think about legacy, but I also think about, I love doing things like this for us. I love being here, doing this for us, because there's something about, I remember the ones that I was able to encounter, that were in a certain position in the field that I was after, and how impactful that was on my drive. So I just want to be known as that, like a woman of talent, a woman of all that's cool, and cute is cool. You know what I mean? That's like the lowest. But up here, it's like I want that respect. Yeah.
Ryan, in terms of your business, what do you think about from a legacy standpoint? I'm just curious.
I struggle with the legacy thing, if I'm being honest with you. I think the game is right now, largely, right? And so there are a couple of things that are important to me. I want to make sure my kids are good to the extent I can put my family in the best position possible. That's important to me. Right? But when we start talking about legacy from this like personality-driven space, I just think it's an impossible goal to chase. This is going to sound kind of sad, and I don't mean for two, but like, if you are asked, like, who is your great-great-great-grandmother or grandfather in your own family? Not mine, yours. A lot of people are going to be like, well, the Johnsons were from, right? And so the game is right now. It's who we're impacting today. And that isn't, again, like our lives don't matter. They do. They matter right now. They matter to the people that we're engaging with. But I'm not playing this with some sort of like, I hope my kids' know my name. Mm-hmm. I hope my kids' have some stuff that helps them navigate their journey better. And
for their kids.
For their kids. And like, they don't have to know that it was Ryan Wilson. Like, Ryan Wilson's gonna be gone. But that's how I try to approach it, right? It's much more from an impact and less from like a brand perspective. That stuff doesn't last. Go drive down this street. Half the stuff that was here 10 years ago, people will look at a building and be like, oh, that was the old.
Can't remember.
Yeah, it doesn't last, right?
Yeah. So somebody asked me a similar question. Cody and I were doing an interview, and sort of without even thinking, I feel similar to you. And so like my answer was like, what does legacy or what does success look like now? And I said it's the way that my kids look at me when I go home. It's the way my wife looks at me when I go home. And so it's, I love all of this and all the things that we do, but this isn't what it's about for me, ultimately. It's about my family. It's about being the kind of man that my kids can look up to, that my wife, she's happy to see me. Not me, the filmmaker or the entrepreneur. It's me, the husband. And so that's what it's about. It's about being a good person. And we have to wrap up, but part of it is like the idea of, called it an entrepreneurship panel, and it is, but it's also black wealth, black money, black entrepreneurship. It's all black love. Because if we don't get those things right, then it's so difficult to be happy together. It's so difficult to, when you think about the thing that causes more strife in relationships and more issues in marriage than anything else, it's money. And so if we want to be happy together, we have to have these conversations. We have to face up to the things that we're not doing right so that we can be stronger and better together. And so, thank y'all. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.